What would you do if the two people who raised you, the ones who taught you to tie your shoes, who sat in the front row at your school plays, who told you they loved you every single night, stood up in a courtroom and told a judge you were not good enough to raise your own child? Not a stranger. Not an ex-partner with an agenda. Your parents. Maya was 27 years old, standing in a parking garage outside a family courthouse, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Her daughter Lily, 3 years old and completely unaware of what was happening 10 floors above her, was already inside with a court-appointed attendant. And Maya's lawyer, Mr. Fitch, had gone quiet in the car ride over. Not thoughtful quiet. Defeated quiet. The kind of silence that tells you everything before a single word is spoken. Her parents, Gerald and Diane, had filed a petition for full guardianship of Lily. Not visitation. Not a compromise. Full guardianship. And from everything Mr. Fitch had seen in the filing, their case was organized, documented, and devastatingly credible. What none of them knew, not Gerald, not Diane, not even Maya herself, was that the most important person in that courtroom had not arrived yet. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Gerald and Diane were not monsters. That is actually what made this so much harder. They were the kind of grandparents who showed up uninvited with casseroles. The kind who remembered Lily's pediatric appointments when Maya forgot to write them down. Church every Sunday. A home with a guest room that always smelled like clean laundry. To everyone in their neighborhood, in their church, in their carefully curated social circle, they were the picture of what good grandparents looked like. But here's what nobody outside that family ever saw. After Maya's divorce from Derek fell apart, quietly, painfully, the way most marriages end, not in explosions but in silences, she moved into a small apartment across town and started working double shifts as a medical assistant. She was exhausted. She was stretched thin. And when Gerald and Diane offered to help with childcare, she said yes. Because what was she supposed to say? No? That yes was the opening they had been waiting for. Over the next 14 months, they documented everything. The nights Maya picked Lily up after 9. The fast food receipts they somehow got hold of. The one weekend Maya left Lily with them, so she could be there for a friend going through a crisis. Every moment was photographed, logged, and time-stamped like evidence in a criminal case. They never once called Maya to say they were worried. They went straight to a family attorney. And their petition did not ask for visitation. It asked for full guardianship of Lily, meaning Maya would need court approval to decide where her daughter went to school, who her doctor was, and whether she could leave the state for a weekend. Have you ever been blindsided by someone you completely trusted? Because Maya did not see a single second of this coming. And when she finally read the full petition, her own mother had signed a declaration describing her as emotionally unstable. But that was not even the worst part. Maya's lawyer, Mr. Fitch, had 20 years of family court experience. He had seen custody battles that would make your stomach turn. He had walked into courtrooms against opponents twice, as prepared as Gerald and Diane, and walked back out with wins. That morning, he looked like he was losing before the first word was spoken. Diane took the stand first. And she was good. She was not cruel or dramatic. She did not raise her voice or point fingers. She was calm, warm, and completely believable. She talked about Lily crying at drop-offs. She talked about Lily asking to stay at Grandma's house. She talked about Maya seeming distracted at family dinners, about phone calls that went to voicemail, about a mother who seemed like she was barely holding it together. Every word landed. Then Gerald took the stand and produced the log. Printed, tabbed, and color-coded across 43 pages. Judge Warren studied it, without a single change in expression. Mr. Fitch cross-examined.
He tried.
But every question Diane deflected with a grandmother's quiet certainty. Every answer Gerald gave came attached to a date, a time, and a location. Here is the cruelest irony of all of this. The very things Maya had sacrificed for Lily, the double shifts, the exhausting hours, the one weekend she asked for help, had been repackaged and handed to a judge as evidence of neglect. Working too hard became abandonment. Asking for one break became instability. The judge called a recess. Mr. Fitch leaned close to Maya and lowered his voice. He said, "Maya, I have to be honest with you." She already knew what was coming. But then the courtroom doors opened, and a woman nobody recognized walked in carrying a sealed manila envelope. Nobody knew who she was. Not Mr. Fitch. Not the bailiff. Not the court clerk who had been working that floor for 11 years. Definitely not Gerald and Diane. She was calm, mid-50s, dressed plainly but with the kind of composed stillness that told you she had been inside courtrooms before. She did not look around nervously. She did not hesitate. She walked directly to the clerk, handed over the sealed envelope, and stepped back without saying a word. The clerk looked at it, looked at the judge, passed it forward. Gerald leaned over to Diane. Diane shook her head slowly. Neither of them recognized her. Mr. Fitch slipped quietly into the hallway. He came back 3 minutes later and sat down next to Maya. His entire posture had shifted. The defeated slump from the recess was gone. He looked at her and said only this: "Do not react. Whatever you feel when that envelope opens, hold it." Maya had no idea what that meant. What she did not know was that this woman had contacted Mr. Fitch 2 days earlier. She had information about Diane, specifically about a period of Diane's life that happened before Maya was born. A period that Diane had spent 30 years making absolutely certain would never surface. Think about that for a second. What secret could a grandmother be hiding that would be relevant to a custody case involving her own grandchild? Judge Warren broke the seal. He read silently. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning running in the ceiling. Then he looked up. First at Maya, then slowly, deliberately, at Gerald and Diane. He cleared his throat. And what he said next would not just end the custody case. It would unravel the story of Maya's entire life. Because what was inside that envelope started with 3 words. The DNA results. Go back to that parking garage for a second. Maya, standing alone, hands shaking, barely able to hold her phone. She thought she was walking into a courtroom to fight for her daughter. She had no idea she was walking into a courtroom to find out who she actually was. The DNA results did not just change the custody case. They collapsed it entirely. What Diane had hidden for 30 years was this. Maya had been adopted as an infant, not through an agency, not through any official process, through an arrangement so private and so deliberately buried that even Maya's birth records had been quietly altered. The woman who walked into that courtroom with the sealed envelope was a retired social worker who had been present at that arrangement. She had kept documentation, all of it, for decades. Because something about the way it had been handled never sat right with her. And here is the part that should make your jaw drop. Gerald and Diane had used Maya's biological origins as the foundation of their guardianship argument, suggesting in private filings that instability ran in her blood. They had weaponized a secret they had kept from her entire life, and they had done it without ever telling her the truth about where she came from. Judge Warren did not just rule in Maya's favor. He referred the matter for further investigation and questioned the integrity of every document Gerald and Diane had submitted. Maya looked across the courtroom at Diane. Diane could not hold her gaze. Sometimes the people fighting hardest to take something from you are the ones most terrified of what you might find out. Maya walked out of that courthouse with Lily on her hip. She did not look back. If you want to know what Maya said to Diane in the hallway before she left, and what the investigation uncovered after court adjourned, subscribe, hit the bell, and come back for part 2. Because the story does not end here. It is just getting started.